The echo of laughter stung worse than any blow. Michael felt the weight of 12 pairs of eyes on his back as he clutched his tattered textbook. The corridor stretched endlessly before him, fluorescent lights humming overhead like impatient spectators. He'd survived 3 years at St. Benedict's Academy on a scholarship that covered tuition, but couldn't shield him from daily reminders of what he lacked. "Hey, Goodwill," a voice called out, the nickname cutting through the hallway chatter. "Those shoes finally giving up on you too?" The tape holding his left sole was coming undone again. Michael kept walking, eyes forward, fingertips grazing the small wooden cross in his pocket, a habit formed 7 years ago when his father first placed it there before departing for a construction job he never returned from. Dominic Hayes stood at his usual spot near the mathematics wing, gold watch glinting beneath rolled-up sleeves, an audience of admirers flanking him like bodyguards. His father owned half the real estate in town, including the apartment building, where Michael and his mother struggled to make rent each month. The social hierarchy at St. Benedict's hadn't been explicitly written, but everyone knew its rules. Scholarship kids like Michael existed to be tolerated, not respected. "I'm talking to you," Dominic said, stepping into Michael's path. Muscular and tall, with designer accessories adorning his wrists and a gold chain around his neck, Dominic cut an imposing figure against the school's blue and burgundy uniform. "You've been avoiding me since you embarrassed me in Philip's class yesterday." Michael had simply corrected an answer during their group assignment. It wasn't his fault that Dominic hadn't bothered to read the chapter. "I wasn't trying to embarrass you," Michael said quietly, clutching his worn backpack strap. "I just wanted to finish the assignment correctly." Dominic's eyes narrowed behind designer frames. "So I'm stupid now?" "I never said that," Michael replied, his voice steady despite the fear crawling up his spine. 3 teachers had already been suspended this year for overstepping disciplinary boundaries with wealthy students. Nobody would intervene for him. "Fight, fight," someone whispered, and the corridor fell silent as students gathered, phones ready to capture whatever happened next. "Hit me." Dominic stepped closer, breath hot against Michael's face. "I know you want to, or are you a coward like your father?" The wooden cross dug into Michael's palm as his fingers tightened around it. Something in him longed to lash out, to release 3 years of accumulated humiliation. Instead, he remembered his mother's words from that morning as she headed to her 3rd job. "Your response to cruelty is the only thing you truly control." "I'm not going to fight you, Dom," Michael said, using Dominic's childhood nickname deliberately. "Not today. Not ever." Dominic's face contorted with rage. He shoved Michael hard against the lockers, sending the worn textbook flying, pages scattering across the polished floor. "Fight back," he demanded, gripping Michael's collar, knuckles white with tension. Michael met his gaze. No. For 3 heartbeats, neither moved. Then Dominic released him with a dismissive push, his gold bracelet catching on Michael's shirt and tearing the fabric. "You're not worth it," Dominic sneered, but something in his eyes shifted, confusion perhaps, or the faintest flicker of respect. He turned away, motioning for his followers to continue down the hall. "Let's go. The scholarship trash needs to pick up his garbage." Michael knelt to gather his scattered pages, aware of whispers and stifled laughter. One page contained his mother's grocery list, accidentally tucked between chapters. Pasta, bread, the cheapest cuts of meat. Humiliation burned his cheeks as someone snapped a photo. He carefully folded the list and slipped it back into the textbook. What Michael didn't see was Dominic glancing back, his expression unreadable as he watched the solitary figure collecting torn pages from the floor. That evening, rain pounded against the thin windows of the apartment Michael shared with his mother. The ceiling leaked in 3 places, strategically placed buckets creating a discordant symphony of drips. "Your shirt," his mother said softly, examining the tear along the collar. Her fingers, cracked from cleaning chemicals, moved swiftly with a needle. "What happened?" "Just caught it on something," Michael lied, unwilling to add to her worries. She gave him a knowing look but didn't press. Instead, she hummed softly, an old hymn about valleys and shadows, the same one she'd sung at his father's funeral. Michael closed his eyes, letting the familiar melody wash over him. His phone buzzed with a text from Benjamin, his only friend at St. Benedict's, another scholarship student who understood what it meant to walk the halls like a ghost. "You okay? Saw what happened? Dom's a monster. Want me to come over?" Michael typed back, "I'm fine. Just another day. See you tomorrow." Placing his phone on the nightstand, Michael noticed a small, leather-bound journal he'd never seen before. "What's this?" he asked. His mother smiled wearily. "I found it when cleaning Mrs. Westfield's study today. She said it belonged to her late husband and told me to take it, said someone might find wisdom in it." Michael opened the journal, the pages yellowed with age. Inside was elegant handwriting, dated 40 years earlier, March 12th. "Today, I lost everything. The business, our savings, my reputation. Bankruptcy feels like drowning with everyone watching from the shore." Thomas Hayes offered to buy what's left of the company for pennies. His eyes held no compassion, only calculation. "I refused. Some dignities cannot be sold, even when dignity is all that remains." Michael's heart skipped. Hayes, Dominic's grandfather. March 21st. "Someone left groceries on our porch last night. Anonymous kindness in a town quick to turn its back. Margaret insists it's evidence that God works through people, not institutions." Perhaps she's right. The children don't understand why we've moved to the small apartment. How do you explain to a 7-year-old that sometimes doing the right thing costs everything? Michael continued reading late into the night, captivated by the journal of Samuel Westfield, once the town's most prominent businessman, before losing everything during an economic collapse. The entries spanned 3 years of struggle, humiliation, and eventually modest rebuilding. The final entry caught Michael's attention. November 3rd. "Thomas Hayes came to the office today. 3 years since he tried to take advantage of our downfall. He looks older, diminished somehow despite his growing wealth. His son, barely 17, is already following in his footsteps, aggressive in business and arrogant in demeanor. Thomas asked for my forgiveness, said money had made him someone he no longer recognized. I wasn't ready to give it, but I saw something I never expected, fear in the eyes of the most powerful man in town. Not fear of losing wealth, but of losing himself. Perhaps that's the beginning of wisdom." Michael closed the journal, thoughts swirling. Dominic's family had a history with the Westfields, a history Dominic likely knew nothing about. The next morning, Michael arrived early to find the school abuzz with activity. As he approached his locker, he noticed a crowd gathered around something on the wall. Pushing through curious onlookers, he froze at the sight of enlarged photos plastered across the corridor. His mother's grocery list, his torn textbook, and worst of all, pictures of their apartment building with red circles highlighting the peeling paint and sagging roof. Beneath the collage, someone had written in bold marker, "Charity case." Laughter rippled through the crowd, but it died when Michael stepped forward. He stared at the display, feeling strangely calm. 3 years of hiding his circumstances, of pretending the differences didn't matter, reduced to this public exhibition of his poverty. "Michael!" Benjamin appeared at his side, face flushed with anger. "This is too far. We should report." "It's just truth," Michael interrupted, reaching up to remove one of the photos. "This is where I live. These are my books. This is my life." The crowd fell silent, uncomfortable with his lack of shame. "Take them down!" A commanding voice cut through the tension. Dominic pushed through the crowd, his usual entourage trailing behind. His face was thunderous, eyes locked on the display. For a moment, Michael thought Dominic was upset about being connected to the prank. Then he realized Dominic was glaring not at him, but at Alexander Reed, the school's wrestling champion and Dominic's closest friend. "What?" Alexander laughed nervously. "It was just for fun." "You said—" "I said nothing about this," Dominic snapped, tearing down a photo. "Take them down now." Confusion rippled through the onlookers as Dominic's friends reluctantly began removing the display. Michael stood frozen, unable to process the bizarre turn of events. "Here!" Dominic thrust the photos into Michael's hands, avoiding eye contact. "I had nothing to do with this." Before Michael could respond, Principal Harrington's voice boomed down the corridor. "What is going on here? Everyone to class immediately!" The crowd dispersed, leaving Michael clutching the evidence of his humiliation. As students filed away, he noticed Dominic lingering behind, face uncharacteristically troubled. "Westfield," he said quietly, using Michael's actual name for perhaps the first time. "Meet me after school. Courtyard by the Oak." The day passed in a blur. Michael's thoughts kept returning to the journal, to the connection between their families that spanned generations. When the final bell rang, he found himself drawn to the old oak tree in the school's courtyard, uncertain what awaited him. Dominic was already there, alone, pacing beside the massive trunk that had witnessed 4 decades of student dramas. He looked different somehow, the confident swagger replaced by restless energy. "You came," he said, sounding genuinely surprised. "What do you want, Dom?" Michael asked warily. Dominic flinched at the nickname. "I read something last night," he began, words coming out stilted and unfamiliar, as though he'd rehearsed them. "My grandfather's journal. My father keeps it locked in his study, but I've known the safe combination for years." Michael's heart quickened. "What did it say?" "It was about your grandfather, Samuel Westfield." Dominic's eyes finally met Michael's. "About how my grandfather essentially destroyed your family's company. Took advantage when they were vulnerable. How the Westfields went from owning half the town to," he gestured vaguely, "well, to where you are now. And this matters to you because—" Dominic took off his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Without them, he looked younger, less intimidating. "Because I always thought my family earned everything we have, that we deserved it. That people like you were just—" He struggled for words. "Lazy or stupid or something." Michael felt a flash of anger. "And now you feel sorry for me? Is that it? Poor Michael, victim of your family's ruthless business tactics?" "No!" Dominic said sharply. "That's not—" He stopped, took a breath. "I've been having these dreams, for weeks now, about drowning. I'm underwater, screaming, but nobody hears me. Nobody helps. Last night, after reading the journal, I dreamed I was drowning again, but this time I recognized the shore. It was my father watching, my grandfather, me." The confession hung between them, unexpected and raw. "I don't understand what you want from me," Michael said finally. Dominic reached into his bag and pulled out an envelope. "This is for your mother. It's 3 months' rent, my allowance." Michael stepped back as though the envelope might burn him. "We don't need your charity." "It's not charity," Dominic insisted. I don't know what it is. Restitution? A beginning?" "Keep your money," Michael said firmly. "That's not how this works." Frustration flashed across Dominic's face. "Then what do you want from me?" "Nothing. I want nothing from you." "Everyone wants something." Michael studied the boy before him. The designer glasses, the expensive watch, the arrogance that came from never hearing no. For the first time, he saw something else, too. Loneliness. "Why do you do it?" Michael asked quietly. "The bullying, the constant need to remind everyone you're better?" Dominic's laugh was hollow. "Family tradition, I guess." He slipped the envelope back into his bag. "My father measures everything in dollars, people included." They stood in silence, the afternoon sun filtering through oak leaves, casting dappled shadows across their uniforms. Identical fabric that could never disguise the gulf between their worlds. "There's a verse my mother likes," Michael said finally. "For what shall it profit a man if he shall gain the whole world and lose his own soul?" Dominic stiffened. "I'm not interested in a sermon." "It's not a sermon. It's a question." Michael fingered the wooden cross in his pocket. "Are you happy, Dom, with all that you have, with who you're becoming?" The question lingered unanswered as Dominic's phone buzzed. He checked the screen and frowned. "I have to go. My father's waiting." As he turned to leave, Michael called after him, "I forgive you." Dominic froze mid-step, but didn't turn around. His shoulders tensed, then relaxed slightly before he continued walking away. That evening, Michael shared the strange encounter with his mother as she soaked her aching feet after a 12-hour shift. "Families pass down more than money," she said thoughtfully. "They pass down values, wounds, patterns. Breaking those patterns takes courage." "Do you think he can change?" Michael asked. She smiled sadly. "Everyone can change, but not everyone chooses to." "I told him I forgive him," Michael admitted. "I'm not sure why. It just came out." His mother reached for his hand. "Forgiveness isn't about deserving. It's about freedom, yours as much as his." As they spoke, across town in a mansion overlooking the valley, Dominic Hayes sat in his father's study, the family's journal open before him. Entries from his grandfather, his father, and blank pages awaiting his own legacy. 3 generations of success built on calculated decisions, strategic relationships, and the unspoken understanding that compassion was weakness. "What are you doing in here?" His father's voice cut through his thoughts. Richard Hayes stood in the doorway, expression shifting from surprise to suspicion as he noticed the journal. At 45, he was a harder, more polished version of Dominic, what the future promised if he followed the prescribed path. "Reading," Dominic answered simply. "About?" Richard approached, eyeing the open page. "Samuel Westfield. How grandfather ruined him during the recession." Richard's laugh was sharp. "Ruined himself. Your grandfather simply recognized an opportunity. That's business. His grandson goes to my school. Michael lives in the apartments we own on Maple Street." "The scholarship kid," Richard nodded, recognition dawning. "Maintenance mentioned a woman and her son there. Always pays late but never misses." "She works 3 jobs," Dominic said quietly. Richard studied his son with growing concern. "What's this about? You're not developing some misplaced guilt over a business transaction that happened before you were born, are you?" Dominic closed the journal. "What if grandfather was wrong? What if we were wrong?" "Wrong about what?" "Success, creating wealth, building something that will outlast us all." Richard gestured to the room around them, to the symbols of their status. "This family clawed its way up from nothing. Your great-grandfather worked in the coal mines. You think he'd be ashamed of what we've accomplished?" "I think he'd wonder what it cost us," Dominic replied, the words surprising even himself. Richard's expression hardened. "You've been spending too much time with your mother and her church friends. This sentimentality is beneath you." The dismissal stung, but Dominic persisted. "I've been dreaming about drowning. See Dr. Morris about sleeping pills. Now about your applications. Columbia is expecting my call tomorrow. The legacy admission is practically guaranteed, but we should discuss your essay strategy." As his father continued outlining the carefully orchestrated future awaiting him, Dominic's thoughts drifted to Michael's question. "Are you happy with who you're becoming?" The next morning dawned clear and cool, autumn painting the trees surrounding St. Benedict's in fiery hues. Michael arrived early, surprised to find a small package in his locker, a new textbook to replace his tattered one, with no note or explanation. He tucked it into his bag, unsure whether to feel grateful or patronized. The morning passed uneventfully until assembly period, when students gathered in the auditorium for announcements. Michael sat near the back with Benjamin, half listening to Principal Harrington discuss upcoming exams and extracurricular achievements. "And finally," the principal concluded, "a reminder about our community values. St. Benedict's stands for excellence not just in academics, but in character. Yesterday's incident with the unauthorized bulletin board display was disappointing. While the perpetrators have been identified and disciplined, I want to—" The side door to the auditorium swung open, and Dominic strode in, late as usual. But instead of slipping into a seat, he walked directly to the stage, interrupting the principal mid-sentence. "Excuse me, Mr. Harrington," Dominic said, his voice carrying through the suddenly silent room. "May I address the student body?" Principal Harrington blinked in surprise. The Hayes family's generous donations to the school's endowment made it difficult to refuse any request from their son. "This is highly irregular, Mr. Hayes, but very well. Briefly." Dominic approached the microphone, scanning the audience until his gaze landed on Michael in the back row. For a moment, he hesitated, adjusting his glasses with uncharacteristic nervousness. "Most of you know me," he began, his voice echoing slightly. "Or you think you do. The Hayes kid, third generation at St. Benedict's, captain of the debate team, early admission to Columbia." He paused, taking a deep breath. "What you might not know is that I've been a coward. And worse than that, I've been cruel." Murmurs rippled through the audience. On stage, Principal Harrington shifted uncomfortably but didn't intervene. "Yesterday, some photos were displayed in the North Corridor. Photos meant to humiliate a fellow student for his economic circumstances. While I didn't create that display, I've spent 3 years creating the culture that made it possible." Michael sat perfectly still, hardly daring to breathe. Beside him, Benjamin whispered, "What the hell is happening?" "Specifically," Dominic continued, his voice gaining strength, "I want to apologize to Michael Westfield." Hundreds of heads turned toward the back of the auditorium. Michael felt the weight of their stares, the sudden unwanted visibility. "Michael refuses to fight back, not because he's weak, but because he's stronger than I could hope to be," Dominic said, removing his glasses again as though needing to see clearly. "Yesterday, he offered me forgiveness I don't deserve. Today, I'm asking for it publicly, so everyone who witnessed my cruelty can witness this too." The auditorium was utterly silent now, the unexpected spectacle holding everyone transfixed. "My grandfather took advantage of Michael's grandfather during financial hardship, essentially destroying their family business. The wealth gap between us isn't because the Hayes family is superior. It's because we've been willing to profit from others' misfortune." At the faculty section, several teachers exchanged alarmed glances. One rose halfway from his seat, but sat back down when Principal Harrington subtly shook his head. "I can't undo generations of damage," Dominic acknowledged, "but I can stop perpetuating it. Starting today, I'm establishing a maintenance fund for the Maple Street apartments, where Michael and 12 other families live in buildings my family owns but has neglected. The money comes from my college fund." Gasps and whispers erupted throughout the room. On stage, Principal Harrington finally stepped forward. "Mr. Hayes, I think that's enough." "Almost done, sir," Dominic said respectfully, before turning back to the audience. "One more thing. Alexander Reed and I will be volunteering at the downtown shelter every Saturday for the remainder of the school year. Anyone who wants to join us is welcome." He stepped away from the microphone, shoulders squared despite the tremor visible in his hands. As he descended from the stage, the auditorium remained frozen in shocked silence. Then, from the back row, Michael slowly stood. Their eyes met across the distance. The poor scholarship student and the wealthy heir, linked by a history neither had chosen, but both now acknowledged. Michael nodded once, a simple gesture of recognition that carried the weight of forgiveness already offered and now publicly accepted. Someone began to clap. Benjamin, his face split in an incredulous grin. Others joined hesitantly, then with growing conviction, until applause filled the auditorium. Not universal. Some students looked confused or dismissive, and several faculty members remained stone-faced, but enough to suggest that something had shifted in St. Benedict's carefully maintained social hierarchy. As students filed out after the assembly, Michael found himself surrounded by classmates who had previously looked through him. Some offered awkward words of support, others simply acknowledged him with nods or smiles. The sudden attention felt strange after years of invisibility. "Michael!" He turned to find Dominic standing alone, separated from his usual entourage. The vulnerability Michael had glimpsed yesterday was still there, but something else too. Determination, perhaps. "That was quite a speech," Michael said quietly. Dominic shrugged, the gesture at odds with his usual confidence. My father's probably already heard about it. His blood pressure's going to break records. You didn't have to do that. Yeah, I did. Dominic hesitated, then extended his hand. My grandfather wrote that your grandfather showed him what true dignity looks like. I think I understand that now. Michael accepted the handshake, aware of curious eyes watching their exchange. What happens now? I don't know, Dominic admitted, but I'm done drowning. As they stood there, the wealthy heir and the scholarship student, connected by a handshake and shared history, neither could predict how their actions would ripple outward. How Alexander Reed would arrive at the downtown shelter that Saturday, uncomfortable but present. How Richard Hayes would rage against his son's public betrayal before falling silent upon reading the full family journal. How small changes would begin at St. Benedict's Academy. Not overnight transformations, but subtle shifts in who sat with whom at lunch, which voices were heard in class discussions, whose experiences were validated. 7 months later, as spring blossoms opened across campus, Michael would sit beneath the oak tree, writing in Samuel Westfield's journal, adding his own chapter to the family story. Nearby, Dominic would argue passionately with the school board about expanding the scholarship program. His Columbia acceptance deferred for a year of community service that scandalized his father's social circle. Two young men from different worlds choosing to break generational patterns one decision at a time. Not perfect, not finished, but changed. Proof that sometimes the greatest act of courage is simply refusing to become what everyone expects you to be. And in that refusal, finding redemption.